quick to follow up on what he's saying? It is good to think about where the school's located, because there's a good chunk when you go to a school, you're making connections, you're starting to work in the field, you're knowing the community, who's there, who's doing what, and if you like being there and you stay there, you've already established those connections. That's helpful. That's very helpful. It's not necessary, but it's very helpful. Number two, grad school is, forget everything about undergrad. Grad school is like a whole nother thing.
Absolutely. Completely
different. You are now, with whatever career you choose, you're all geeks in this one little field, and you all are sharing that. It's so fun, because even the hard stuff you want to do because it's something you're passionate about. So just know whatever you do, grad school is just awesome. Number three, men to female ratio. You made me think about that. Look around the room. This is what this field is looking like. As little as 10 years ago, it was completely the opposite, right? So for you men in the room, this is a field where you can really take that to your advantage, because there will be fewer male therapists, and male therapists serve an important niche. So we need men in the field. So the other piece is, where else are you with a lot of women? So it's a very unique dynamic. If you go into math and science, it's a different dynamic.
Just kind of going back to your question as far as the graduate school preparation goes, just so you know, we do have right on the other side of the wall here our graduate school advisors. So if you have questions about the prerequisites or the requirements to get into graduate programs, or you just need help researching the programs, they've got lots of great resources, and you can also meet with those advisors, and they can help you with those types of questions.
One last little thought. Go to the bookstore and look up the coursework, the books that the psychologists are required to read. Look at the books that the MFTs and counselors are required to read. See what excites you.
And the art therapists.
Excuse me, and absolutely the art therapists. There's a whole creative piece there, because you're infusing the artistic expression.
Absolutely.
So we're getting close on time here. So maybe at this point, if we could just wrap the panel up with maybe one piece of advice that you wish you had had if you were sitting in their chairs as undergraduate students. So something that would kind of, you wished you had known as you were an undergraduate student that would have better prepared you for where you are today. So can I start with you?
For me, I think it would be what David was saying. If I had that, maybe that advice a little bit, to really plan out what you want to do, and is it what you really want to do, and especially being a man, you know, my dream is always have my wife stay at home, and is that going to be enough for you to do? And do you want to send your kids to private school? And you can do those things, but like Dave was saying, then, you know, create your niche, and, you know, do your research or your patents or your things where you can build those kind of multiple streams of income, so to speak, like you were saying. So think of those things ahead of time. So I think that was really good advice.
Along with that, there's one other piece that I would do. I would go to every doctoral program that you even have a vague interest in, and I would download their admissions forms. Because if you're undergraduates now, you got time. So what you can do, I'm a real big contingency kind of guy, so you have the room in your life to create the visualization of what it might look like, to build a vision of, well, I think I want to do this, and I've got 2.5 years, so maybe in the interim, I could go ahead and create a way to make myself be able to get into this program. You know, so I could boost my GPA by working a little bit harder on this or that. It's a weird thing, you know, when we're just kind of floating along, we don't oftentimes build the way to make something happen. But once you see that, well, wait a minute, I'm only like, you know, 10 or 15% from getting into this place. If I was to do a little bit more of this, or maybe the campus doesn't have a certain kind of a crisis program or something, but if I created one, well, you know what? They just might give me that extra little thing to get in. And so then you start to visualize that extra piece. So pick out, some of the best programs and look across the themes of what it is that they are all asking for, and try to see if you could create something, add something, do whatever. And you might be shocked at what you could create for yourself. And then you start to see, it's like that what would you do if you couldn't fail thing. Because if you can do that, then you start to think about how you would actually be helping clients that get stuck, that can't visualize something, they can't imagine. It's on-the-job training. You're doing the same thing.
I would say on the purely practical end, just to follow something that you said, and there was a question asked about this, is to be really aware about where you choose to go to school, because that's going to have an impact both on licensing, it's going to have an impact on, as you said, on your community, your peers. I trained in New York City. I left with job offers and moved out here, only to find it was a very different culture of how people did therapy, that kind of thing. I think that's really important, is to look at, because you don't have to stay. It's like she said, you don't have to stay. I didn't stay where I was. There were factors in my life that led me to move cross country after I finished my degree. But to be thinking about what you're creating and doing that, and maybe you find out you really hate where you go to school and you really want to get out of there, but to be conscious of the practicalities of what's available and what kind of market you're looking at. Like, say, San Diego has a huge market of therapists. And one of the things with the program that I run is that in people taking that program and getting the certificate from Extension, is that in doing so is that they raise the bar in terms of when they put their resume in with, the 40 other, 50, 60 other resumes, then they have an extra skill. They have something that they've added. And to be thinking in terms of that kind of thing. What can you add? What can you be special in? And to use I do believe everyone's creative, whether anyone calls themselves an artist in the room or not, and to use that kind of creativity in your thinking about what you want to do and how you want to do it and where you want to be and the kind of people you want to be around.
The only two things I can add to all these wonderful thoughts is financial. Really look at what it's going to cost for either program. Ask yourself, based on what you think you're going to be paid with whatever degree you're getting, how long it's going to take to pay that off, because it can be extremely expensive to get a doctorate these days. So that's something to think about. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, I had these two programs and I took the harder road. That may or may not be for everybody, but I can say it was the best thing I did. It pushed me, and I think as a whole it made me better as a result. So don't be scared to reach.
Thank you very much. So please join me in thanking our panelists. Reminder, I know Greg mentioned earlier that this is kind of one of our first events as part of the Career Discovery Week.